Welcome to Podcast Learnin' Fun. Let's start today's journey of learning. You know how we always talk about forces and acceleration when we describe how things move in physics? Well, today, we're going to explore a totally different approach called Lagrangian Mechanics.
Yeah, it's kind of like you're looking under the hood of physics and discovering a whole new engine that's driving the motion we observe.
Oh, okay.
So instead of forces, we'll be focusing on energy.
Right.
And this fascinating idea called the principle of least action.
The principle of least action. That sounds almost philosophical, like nature is taking the easy way out.
It really does make you wonder, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So at its core, Lagrangian mechanics is about finding the most efficient way for a system to evolve from one state to another.
Okay.
It's like nature is optimizing for efficiency, always choosing the path of least resistance.
Okay, I'm intrigued, but I need a little more grounding here.
Sure.
What does this actually look like in practice? How is Lagrangian mechanics different from, what we usually learn in physics?
Think of it as a different language for describing motion.
Okay.
We use something called generalized coordinates.
Okay.
And these coordinates could be anything that uniquely defines the system's configuration.
Right.
Angles, positions, you name it. It's all about finding the most elegant and insightful way to describe the system's state.
So we're not limited to just like the usual X, Y, and Z coordinates.
Right.
We can tailor the coordinates to the specific problem we're trying to solve.
Exactly. That's one of the beauties of this approach.
Yeah.
And then comes the heart of Lagrangian mechanics.
Okay.
The Lagrangian itself. It's a single function that encapsulates the entire system's dynamics.
Right.
You can think of it as the difference between the kinetic energy, which describes the system's motion, and the potential energy, which is determined by the system's configuration.
I see. So instead of dealing with a bunch of individual forces, we have this one function, the Lagrangian, that captures the overall energy picture.
Precisely. And what's amazing is that from this single function, we can derive the equations that govern the system's motion, the Euler-Lagrange equations.
Okay, hold on. You're telling me that by simply figuring out this difference between kinetic and potential energy, we can unlock the secrets of how a system will move. There's got to be more to it than that.
You're right. There's a crucial principle at play here, the principle of least action.
Okay.
This principle tells us that nature is inherently lazy, always choosing the path that minimizes something called the action. Think of it as finding the most efficient path on a map. There might be many routes you could take,
Right.
but nature always picks the one that takes the least amount of effort.
So the Euler-Lagrange equations are like a mathematical shortcut to finding this most efficient path.
Precisely. They take the Lagrangian and essentially tell us, here's how the system will evolve over time to minimize the action.
Okay.
They give us a set of differential equations that, when solved, reveal the system's trajectory.
That's pretty mind-blowing. But what about all those real-world complexities?
Yeah.
What if we have a ball rolling down a hill, but it's constrained to a track?
Okay.
How does Lagrangian mechanics handle those kinds of limitations?
That's where things get really elegant.
Okay.
Lagrangian mechanics provides a remarkably streamlined way to deal with constraints.
Right.
We can often choose generalized coordinates that inherently account for the constraints, simplifying the whole problem.
Can you give me a concrete example of how that works?
Imagine a simple pendulum swinging back and forth.
Okay.
Instead of trying to describe its motion using the usual X and Y coordinates, we can just use the angle it makes with the vertical.
Right.
That single coordinate captures the essence of its motion.
So we're basically choosing coordinates that naturally align with the constraints of the system,
Yeah,
making the math much cleaner.
exactly. And, there are different flavors of constraints.
Okay.
Some, like the length of our pendulum, are called holonomic constraints. They are fixed relationships between the coordinates.
Right.
Others, like a wheel rolling without slipping, are called non-holonomic constraints and involve velocities.
So does Lagrangian mechanics have a way of dealing with both types of constraints?
It does, and it does so beautifully.
Yeah.
It's all about finding the right mathematical tools for the job.
Right.
For instance, we can use something called Lagrange multipliers to bring those non-holonomic constraints into the picture.
This is starting to feel like a superpower for solving physics problems.
Yeah.
Can we actually see it in action?
Sure.
Can you walk me through some specific examples of how we'd use Lagrangian mechanics?
Absolutely. Let's start with something simple, like a free particle.
Okay.
Imagine a particle just drifting through space with no forces acting on it.
So it's just like cruising along at a constant speed.
Right.
That doesn't sound very exciting.
You might think so, but even this simple case highlights the elegance of Lagrangian mechanics. We can easily define the Lagrangian for this free particle, and the Euler-Lagrange equations will simply tell us that, well, its momentum remains constant. Exactly what we'd expect from Newton's laws.
So even in simple cases, Lagrangian mechanics gives us the same results as classical physics.
Right.
But perhaps in a more elegant way.
Precisely. And as the systems get more complex, the advantages become even more apparent. Let's take our trusty pendulum swinging back and forth.
Okay.
Remember how we described its motion using just the angle?
Yes. That was a clever way to handle the constraint of the pendulum's length.
Well, using the Lagrangian mechanics, we can derive the equation that describes this swinging motion.
Okay.
And guess what? It's the same equation we get from traditional methods.
Okay.
But the derivation is much more streamlined and insightful.
So we're seeing a pattern here. Lagrangian mechanics seems to offer a more elegant and perhaps more efficient way to arrive at the same physical laws.
Yes.
But are there any downsides to this approach? Is it always the best tool for the job?
That's a great question. While it's a powerful tool, it does have a steeper learning curve than Newtonian mechanics.
Right.
It requires you to think about motion in terms of energy.
Okay.
And these somewhat abstract generalized coordinates.
I could see how that might be a hodl for some people. It's like learning a new language, right?
Exactly. And setting up the Lagrangian for really complex systems, especially those with, tricky non-holonomic constraints, can be, well, a bit challenging.
Yeah.
Sometimes the traditional Newtonian approach might be more intuitive.
Okay.
Especially if you're dealing with straightforward forces.
So it's a trade-off, elegance and efficiency on one hand.
Right.
And a potentially steeper learning curve on the other.
Yeah.
But tell me, is Lagrangian mechanics only useful for describing the motion of objects? Or does it have applications beyond classical mechanics?
That's where it gets really exciting. Lagrangian mechanics isn't limited to just blocks sliding down ramps and pendulums swinging back and forth.
Okay.
It has far-reaching applications in various branches of physics.
Like what?
It's used in electromagnetism, quantum mechanics, and even in Einstein's theory of general relativity.
Wow, that's incredible. It seems like a foundational framework that connects different areas of physics.
It really does. And the principle of least action, which is at the heart of Lagrangian mechanics, has profound implications.
Okay.
It suggests that nature operates on principles of optimization, always seeking the most efficient path.
That's pretty mind-blowing thought. It makes you wonder if there are other deep connections waiting to be discovered. But let's come back to Earth for a moment. If someone wanted to dive deeper into Lagrangian mechanics, where would you recommend they start?
There are some fantastic resources out there. Classical Mechanics by Goldstein is considered the Bible for this subject.
Okay.
But it's quite comprehensive.
Right.
If you're looking for a gistler introduction, Mechanics by Taylor is a great option.
Okay.
And of course, there are tons of online lectures and videos that can help you get started.
Great. I'll definitely be checking those out. So we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about the basics of Lagrangian mechanics, its advantages and disadvantages, and even its broader applications in physics.
Incredible.
We've only scratched the surface, but hopefully you've gained an appreciation for the elegance and power of this approach.
For sure.
It's a way of thinking about motion that reveals deep connections and insights that might not be obvious from a traditional Newtonian perspective.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm definitely hooked.
Good.
This makes me want to explore the world of physics with fresh eyes. What other hidden gems are out there waiting to be discovered?
It's fascinating to think that these fundamental ideas in physics often have like a really rich history behind them.
Oh, okay.
And Lagrangian mechanics is no exception.
You've piqued my curiosity now.
Yeah.
What's the story behind this elegant framework? Who are the key players and how did it all come about?
Well, you have to go back to the 18th century to a brilliant mathematician and physicist named Joseph Louis Lagrange.
Okay.
He was looking for a more powerful and, dare I say, beautiful way to describe the motion of systems, especially those with constraints.
So even back then, physicists were striving for elegance in their descriptions of the universe.
Absolutely.
I like that.
And at the time, Newtonian mechanics was the dominant paradigm.
Right.
But as you can imagine, it could get quite cumbersome when dealing with complex systems with lots of moving parts and constraints.
I can see how trying to keep track of all those forces and accelerations could get messy quickly.
Yeah.
So Lagrange came to the rescue with this new approach.
He did. He introduced the concept of generalized coordinates and this revolutionary idea of the principle of least action.
Okay.
This shifted the focus from forces to energy and a more global view of the system's motion.
It sounds like a real paradigm shift. How did the physics community react to Lagrange's work at the time? Were they immediately on board with this new way of thinking?
Well, new ideas, especially revolutionary ones, often face some resistance.
Yeah.
And Lagrangian mechanics was no exception.
Right.
Some physicists were initially skeptical, but the sheer elegance and efficiency of this approach gradually won them over.
And today it's considered a cornerstone of classical mechanics.
Absolutely. It's had a profound impact on our understanding of motion. And its applications go far beyond, like, the traditional examples we've discussed.
Like what?
You see it in robotics, aerospace engineering, and even in the study of complex systems like the weather.
That's amazing to think about. Lagrange's work centuries ago is still shaping the way we understand and interact with the world today.
Yeah, it really highlights how fundamental discoveries in physics can have, like, a ripple effect across disciplines and throughout time.
Yeah.
Lagrangian mechanics is a testament to the power of seeking elegant and insightful explanations for the phenomena we observe.
This whole deep dive has been truly enlightening. It's made me appreciate the beauty and interconnectedness of physics in a whole new way.
Good.
It's not just about equations and calculations. It's about finding those underlying principles that connect seemingly disparate phenomena.
And that's what makes physics so captivating. There's always more to discover.
Right.
More connections to make, and more elegant ways to describe the universe we inhabit.
I couldn't agree more. A huge thank you to you for guiding us through this fascinating world of Lagrangian mechanics.
Of course.
It's been a real pleasure.
The pleasure was all mine. It's always exciting to share the wonders of physics with curious minds.
And to our listeners, we hope this has sparked your curiosity and left you with a sense of wonder. Keep exploring.
Yes.
Keep asking questions, and who knows, maybe you'll be the next Lagrange, uncovering new and elegant ways to describe the universe.
Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.
Thank you for listening to Podcast Learn and Fun. If you like our videos, please subscribe, click the like button, comment, and share. See you next time.